final day of the conference. I hope everyone's been enjoying the sessions. We had a great keynote yesterday, and we have an excellent cap note today. I was really trying to figure out how to introduce Clifton Taulbert because he just has lived one of those lives that you certainly can't describe in just a few minutes. So I've had to pare down. So he's just been contributed so much over the years, and so hopefully that's reflected in my brief introduction, and then also in the discussion he's going to have with us today about leadership. And so Clifton Taulbert is a former migrant cotton picker who grew up on the Mississippi Delta. As he says it, he was living a life he thought would never change. He took the lessons he learned from that Delta experience on the Delta and is now an award-winning author, an entrepreneur, an educator, and a CEO of 2 different companies. So he's written 14 books, produced major motion pictures. His first book was Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored, which has become an international bestseller and a major motion picture. He's also a graduate of the Southwest Graduate School of Banking at Southern Methodist University and serves as a director of Central Bank of Oklahoma. And the list just really goes on from there. Again, he's lived a very rich, full life thus far. But today, during our conversation, Clifton will help us think about providing leadership with additional tools so that the vision and the mission of our various community development entities continues to meet goals, even as we're confronted with uncontrollable changes, including societal change. In particular, we're going to learn how to include inquisitiveness and imagination in our leadership toolbox. And so I think Clifton has some really pertinent experiences and words of wisdom to share with us today that will hopefully be relevant to our respective programs and community development work as a whole. So with that, Clifton, I'm going to pass it off to you. And at the end, we will have time for questions. I think Clifton will probably also do some interactive, communication throughout the presentation. So be ready for that. And all right, so Clifton, you're up.
Thank you. It's my pleasure being with all of you. And it's kind of nice to be the ending and closing speaker, which hopefully you're taking copious notes and you will remember all that is being said. But the one good thing about life is this: you make discoveries every day. And this is what I've had the opportunity to do, is to make great discoveries about what is possible. And then technology comes along in a way that no one could have imagined 10, 20, well, I won't say 10, but certainly 20 or 40 years ago. We live in a different world, a world that changes every day. And here's the significant thought along those lines, is that change does not seek our permission. It happens anyway, but as leaders, and those of you who are in management and supervisory positions where others look to you in order to set the course of their destiny, we have to realize that change, even though it does not seek our permission, we have to be prepared to handle it. So this is a conversation that I think I love to give it because I talk to myself, because I'm right in the world with all of you and change happens in my world as well. So how do I grow my own toolbox? And how do I pivot with purpose? How do I handle life as it comes without my permission, but yet I'm expected to use it wisely and to do it well? So this will be our talk today as we move through. And let's see here how to get my first one changed here. Okay. And I'm having a little technical help, so that's a good thing. Now I do perfect. That's the one thing I've learned. It's okay to have some friends along the way. So just make sure if you learn, if nothing else I say resonates with you, remember 2 good friends, one that is steeped in technology and the other one that believes everything you say. Have those 2 good friends with you and life is just fine. But let's talk about purpose for a moment. to pivot with purpose. First and foremost is this: purpose creates meaning. And this is important as we find ourselves in a world where change is apparent every day. Purpose offers a sense of direction. And that means you're not going to be turning around in circles, not going anywhere. Purpose guides our paths and informs our behavior. So this is why purpose becomes such an important part of the decision-making process. Now, but I'm also saying you got what it takes. Why? Because 1862, from my perspective, was the start of this incredible world that you found yourselves in. And what is so amazing, it was right during the time of the Civil War that all of a sudden someone thought in terms of the agrarian world, how do we make it better? How do we create a learning construct around that? And so the Morrill Act came into being, which sort of set the stage for where you are. But I can assure you that no one in 1862 could have imagined 2021. So something has happened. There's a lot of change has taken place between 1862 and 2021. And all of you and your predecessors have been part of that change. What happened is that innovation always seeds the future. And today, what you're doing today and why this day is so important is that what you're doing today will seed the future that many of us may not be around to give a high five for it or give a kudos on it, but it's going to happen anyway. But because of what you do today, those things will happen tomorrow, and all of them are absolutely critical. Now, before I want to sort of tell you a little bit about the extension services that I was introduced to as a child. It basically changed our lives. When I was first talking to Carrie, I think she had a laughing because I said that Mr. Charlie Burton was our county agent, but somehow we thought he was a minor god. I mean, everybody knew Mr. Burton. And when he come to town in his khaki pants, khaki shirt, and a green hat, and he had more pencils and notepads than one could imagine. And you said, well, why is that important, Clifton? Well, it's important because most of us were field workers. Either you had your own sharecropping field or you were a domestic migrant worker, as most of the members of my family was. But Mr. Burton worked with the farmers out of the extension office in Washington County, Greenville, Mississippi. And when he would come in his car to Glen Allen, Mississippi, where I live, that's where the farmers live primarily. I mean, the word would be it's just like the song Marvin Gaye sang many years ago. I heard it through the grapevine. There was a grapevine in Glen Allen, and the grapevine was very, very up to date on when Mr. Burton was coming to town, and the word was spread like wildfire. He was just that important to our lives. It was amazing to me that I go to Greenville today, and the conversation will eventually get around to Charlie Burton, because he's the guy who taught the people of my world that there would be a tomorrow, and we want you to be part of it. That's one of the neat things about extension services, how it has morphed into such an extensive array of services that you provide, not just rural, but urban as well. So we celebrate your world. I celebrate my world when Charlie Burton was a representative of that world. And even though it was a legally segregated world, but his attention to knowledge at Alcorn A&M College, one of the Morrill colleges that we all knew in the Mississippi Delta, he did a great job historically, setting the stage for conversations that I would have 50 years later. He had no idea that this little guy who ran behind his car in Glen Allen on the gravel roads would one day have an opportunity to talk to men and women who are still involved in the work that he so graciously loved. Now, but the reality is this, and I know you understand this, but I like to repeat it again. Your teams are looking up. What do you want them to experience? That is so important from leadership. Leadership is not just having the do's and don'ts, but it's also being prepared for a future that has not yet happened, realizing that your team, they are looking up and they're looking to you, but it's inside of you are the answers. What do you want them to experience? That is absolutely a critical question, and your answer is even more so. Now, to start us off collectively and inclusively, I'm going to have several of you talk about the article that I had the opportunity to write for Leader to Leader, an inquisitive and innovative culture, leadership's key to marketplace success. What am I really saying? I am saying that today's world has changed in such a way that even the culture that surrounds us has to be reflective of that change and what we're bringing to the table. So hopefully in this pre-read that you will have found some incredible answers or some questions that you might want to ask me at the end of our session. But let's get started. I have people that have actually volunteered in advance, so give kudos to yourself. This is the first time this has ever happened to me. I usually have to call names of people and they don't quite answer immediately, but I tell them I know you're there. And then they finally kind of ease in. But today should be a great day. We got about 6 volunteers. So we're going to start with Melissa Hamilton. Melissa, wherever you are, I know you've read the article and you have graciously volunteered to share with us your takeaway from an inquisitive and innovative culture.
Hi.
Hi, Melissa.
I really enjoyed the article. Thank you. And thank you for being here with us today. I think for me, with current times, I was inspired just by disruption and that there's a lot of disruption in our world. And this idea of asking what if during that disruption and kind of the idea and concept of, after disruption, there's like this Renaissance concept or idea of change. And so that makes me really excited and optimistic for what's next, because I'm the person that likes to ask what if. And so I really enjoyed your article, and thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Melissa. But this is what we're talking about today. We're talking about the mindset, your mindset. How do we help to shape that so that it can be better prepared to deal with the reality of the present and also as we move ourselves into the future as well. So let's talk to Jody Gale. Where are you, Jody? Let's hear from you and see what you have to tell us. Now there's a little silence there, and we call it the Jody Gale moment. So if Jody does not show up within the next jiffy, we're going to call on Melinda. Now there's Jody. He's there.
I am here. I was struggling to find my unmute button. Thank you very much for the introduction and for your perspective on extension. I very much have enjoyed your introductory comments and perspective on the role that extension played in your life and the opportunity that extension has to continue to influence the lives of many. Enjoyed your article, very much thinking about the future and the role that all of us have in our respective roles. Some of us are in elected positions. Some of us are working behind the scenes. And one of the things that I kind of gathered from your article is as you look at the future, it's uncertain, and using the skills that we currently have, we have the ability to make a significant influence on those on our team and those who may not necessarily be a team member, but those that we serve. Maybe as a side note to that, many times those of us in extension work in a shadow leadership role, where we may not necessarily be at the head of the meeting or standing at the podium. We may be working behind the scenes. And I think that we have a significant ability to influence all of those that we encounter through a shadow leadership type approach, where we can influence through education for good. Thank you for the opportunity to add a few thoughts.
Thanks, Jody. And one thing to keep in mind, if you go back to 1862, when all of this maybe had its form of starting, and look at where you are today, and look at all of the changes that have come about that have been of great benefit, not only to individuals, but to the country as a whole. And none of those things could have happened without people being involved. So you are a very key factor in the movement of change and the ability to take full advantage of the technology that has also come down the pipeline as well. So Jody, thank you. And now we're going to ask.
Could I add one additional comment?
Sure, most definitely.
I was thinking about this greatly the last few weeks, and in order for us to be change agents, that's a term from our maybe recent past, or a concept from our recent past. In order for us to, in extension, to be change agents, it's important for us to work and educate those who are in position to help cause change. Working with leaders, whether they're congressional staff members, county commissioners, members of congressional delegations, county commissioners, mayors. Those are our students as well. So we can help cause change by teaching and being an influence on those who are in leadership positions, who cast the votes and make the decisions and determine budgets. It's important for us to look broadly at the students that we in Extension teach. Thank you for letting me add that thought.
Now that's perfect, Jody. This is I won't call it freewheeling conversation, but it is a conversation. And the one thing that I have come to learn and to really appreciate over the years of my talking with literary people around the world, if we can create an environment of conversation so that this conversation continues long after I'm not here or you're not here, that's what makes the world what it is, and that was keep things moving ahead. So let's ask Melinda. I talked with Melinda earlier this morning and was left with the idea that she had certainly enjoyed the article. Melinda, why don't you close us out with your thoughts, please?
Thank you. Thanks for asking for audience participation today, and thanks for being here with us. When I read the article, the thing that jumped out at me the most was the future should always be an agenda item. And I think, in all the meetings that we participate in, a lot of times we get stuck in what we've always done and even what we're currently doing, and we forget that the future should always be an agenda item. And so in the work that we do a lot of times with strategic planning and all kinds of areas in Extension, I think the future being on the agenda resonated the most with me. And this quote I really liked: "These new realities expect leaders to be future-focused visionaries who boldly share innovative possibilities with their teams. The future should always be an agenda item." So I agree with that statement.
Thanks, Melinda. And I certainly try and live by that, because I would love to say that I've always thought that way, but I've grown into that way of thinking, just looking at the world and having traveled the world, working with people from so many walks of life. You realize how much we have lived in a world of change, but also how much we have been part of that change and will continue to be that way. So when I asked the question earlier that your people, your teams are looking up, what do you want them to experience? If the future is not an agenda item, we may elude some of the things that they are looking to experience, because we are not, I won't use the word stuck, but we are comfortable in the positions where we currently are. We know that, we understand that, and that is what we have built our reputation on. But now we're getting an opportunity to extend our reputation to a much larger perspective. So thank all of you for the pre-read and for the conversation, and we'll continue moving on to Extension Professionals. Futurists still extending 1862. I mean, that was a great starting place, because I understand that Mr. Morrell, who is named for this start in the extension work in colleges, being able to take agriculture to another level, didn't have the opportunity to finish college or anything like that, but he was certainly fully aware of what was needed and what were the possibilities. So there's the toolbox, and these are the 5 things I want to put in your toolbox: inquisitiveness, imagination, introspection, mindset, and culture. Now, mindset and culture, you probably thought about those because they're easily talked about, and we clearly understand that mindset matter, and we also understand that we all have a culture. But I try to look at them all a little differently. But many of us have not necessarily thought in terms of inquisitiveness as a leadership asset, and imagination as a leadership asset, and introspection as a leadership asset. And today, more than any other time on the planet, we need those 3 literally to move us into whatever the next levels of opportunities might be. So going in circles is not pivoting. It's movement without purpose. I mean, sometimes we can just be moving, but we're not going anywhere. But every one of you are committed to a destiny, and you want to take other people along with you. So purpose become important. As we said earlier, that is an important thing to realize. And also to think in terms of issues as opportunities. The issues of energy, the environment, technology. I spent most of yesterday talking to a young man involved in the oil industry and looking at how that industry is changing, the fossil fuel energy, what it might look like 10 years from now or 20 years from now. But I also realized that out of a barrel of crude oil, collectively, we get about 6,000 different products that most of us are totally unaware that crude oil played a role in that. Then there's technology, there's infrastructure, there's climate change, building human capacity, diversity and inclusion. All of these are issues that you have to think about, because why? We're dealing with people. Economic development, governmental organization, tourism, and so many others. Issues can become opportunities, but your choice of mindset will definitely matter. Let me get us a little drink of water. And as Johnny Carson said, and I promise there's nothing but water in here. Okay. Thomas Friedman on technology leading change. Technology is accelerating our lives faster than our ability to adapt. Now, we have no control over that. It's just happening. But these are the options that we have as people. These are the options your leadership has: adaptability, versatility, and lifelong learning. All of those are active, involved circumstances to find yourself so that you can actually conquer what needs to be done in order to get done to what you have adhered to. So the 21st century innovative leadership, embracing a 15th century mindset. The 5 strategies we talked about to ignite your purpose and address issues. Embrace inquisitiveness. And the operative word here is to embrace inquisitiveness. So imagination, but what are you going to do with your imagination? Because everyone has that gift. But the key is to accelerate your imagination. Can that happen? Yes. Are most adults in the business of accelerating their imagination? Not necessarily so, but that doesn't mean that we should not be. Question your present reality. That has all to do with introspection. We have to be introspective, and we have to look at that as an asset. Every one of us, we deserve the opportunity and the right to look deeply within our current set of circumstances. Are they getting us to where we want to go? Are they holding us back, or are they propelling us into the future? Then, of course, again, choose your mindset. There are 2 mindsets, and we'll talk about those: the fixed and the growth, which a lot of work has been done by Dr. Carol Drake out of Stanford, an incredible proponent of understanding that we have a choice in the mindsets. And then, of course, brand new culture. At the end of the day, you're working with people. They may be in your office or you're going to their office, but the culture you are in or the culture that you bring, because culture is mobile, it travels with you. I often tell people that when you get up in the morning and while you sleep, culture is probably resting. But when you get up and awake, culture starts because you start doing what you've always done. You're following a path of what I call work ethic and the way of doing things that you become accustomed to. So branding your culture, being intentional about that, and clearly understanding that you don't have to accept everything that you've always done simply because it has become normalized. You have to look at it and ask hard questions about it. That's why I take you back to the 15th century, because this is when we look, think, and talk to some incredible people who have left lessons that are of significant value to the 21st century. And that gentleman is Leonardo da Vinci. He is our subject matter expert. Now, most of you, perhaps all of you, know him by the work that he's done in the field of art. You know him as the guy who brought the Mona Lisa to the Louvre in Paris, where people still come to. 500 years ago, Leonardo da Vinci said, I'm going to do something that's going to keep the world watching me for the rest of the life of humanity. And the guy did it. But let's check out what else he's done. That's the same guy. Painter, sculptor, engineer, chemist, military strategist, scientist, botanist, architect, geologist, anatomist, mathematician. No, maybe 8 months ago now, I believe, on some of the papers that Leonardo da Vinci had left behind, and they wanted to see if it worked. You know, everything else that he left behind worked, but surely, maybe this would not work. But the report from MIT was the guy was right on spot. And he didn't have a secret sauce either. And he didn't have technology to help him either. And he didn't have the history of others, for the most part, to help him either, because he was, as I would say in the South, he was plotting new ground. But what he did have was an inquisitive mind. And we all have that. But sometimes we don't realize that it is an asset to stretch, to watch it grow, and to utilize it. Why not become the next most inquisitive person to have ever lived? Asking questions is absolutely essential to success. Now, let's bring in another guy, Steve Jobs. Steve Jobs and Da Vinci are futurists, 500 years apart, but Steve Jobs left in his biography a great story of the 7,000 pages of literature, not literature, but 7,000 pages of all of his work around painting, around sculpture, around being an inventor. And I won't say that Steve Jobs read all of that, but he read enough of that to be able to say that for him, Leonardo da Vinci was a 21st century mentor. So the iPhone could owe itself to Leonardo da Vinci, who didn't have a phone. But what he talked about were qualities of leadership and qualities of life in such a way that it would literally impact what he did, how he did it, and more importantly, what he expected that would come from the questions being asked. My bottom line is, please ask questions. My second bottom line is, it's okay to ask questions. The Mona Lisa and the iPhone are innovative outcomes, 500 years apart, but absolutely an incredible conversation. Embraced inquisitiveness, accelerated their imagination, questioned their present reality, chose their mindset, branded their culture. Now, you may say, Clifton, you have repeated this 3 times. You're right, I have. But I had a reason for repeating it 3 times. Because in the 3rd time, I'm telling you what they did with the knowledge. And this is where I want you to be headed. I want you to be headed toward the place where you can say, I have embraced inquisitiveness. I have accelerated my imagination. I have questioned my present reality. I have chosen the right mindset. I have branded my culture. When we do these things, and this becomes our reality, this is when we leave behind us a mark of our presence on the planet and the things that we will have accomplished that will absolutely outstretch our own imagination. So When facing unprecedented challenges, pivot with purpose, create your Mona Lisa. Wow. Create your Mona Lisa. Using that as a metaphor for doing something that hasn't been done before. Now, painting was done before. There's no doubt about it. During the Italian Renaissance, during the time of Leonardo da Vinci, great artists lived, and they had a number of patrons throughout Italy. People were paying for their work, but Leonardo da Vinci questioned his present reality and said, we don't have to do it this way. And that can get you in trouble, because oftentimes when people are very comfortable doing what they've always done, and all of a sudden a little whippersnapper comes in and says, wait, ooh, we don't want to wait. We want to do what we've always done. And the masters of these great painters, they say, hey, little boy, you know, wait a minute, we've been doing this before you were born. What are you talking about? But this is why you study the human anatomy, according to Leonardo da Vinci. If you want to know what makes a smile, then you have to understand the muscles behind the face. And most people just drew from one perspective, but Leonardo da Vinci brought another perspective to the table. That's why I'm saying, when facing unprecedented challenges and issues that often look foreboding, I am saying, think about it, pivot with purpose to create your own Mona Lisa. Now, let's see. Our first tool here is embrace inquisitiveness, keep asking questions, a timeless and universal asset. Keep asking questions. So let's see what Leonardo is talking about. Well, first of all, let me take you to Utah, Salt Lake City, the university, where I had an opportunity to work with 126 Fulbright scholars from 46 different countries. All of these young men and women were already into their last year of their terminal degrees. They were all bright, obviously. They had all made decisions as to where they were headed. But something happened while they were on their way to the forum. They decided, I want to know more. I want to tap into my entrepreneurial quotient. And how can I leverage my academic journey? These are things they wanted to know. And my job was to create an environment for a whole week in Utah at the university that would not help them. They wouldn't put aside what they had learned, but they would bring to the forefront that they wanted to learn more, using their historical efforts as a launching pad into the future. So when I talk about being futuristic, when I talk about being innovative, when I talk about being entrepreneurial minded, I'm not saying forget anything that you learned. No, you got to have a launching pad. But what I'm saying, don't build your house on the launching pad. Remember that the launching pad is to get you into space, not to keep you on the ground. So what you've done yesterday is absolutely critical, but what you do tomorrow is dependent upon how you utilize what you did yesterday. Diversity of thought and robustness of solutions. How do you bring this about? Once you begin to have a lot of people thinking and talking and being involved with you, it makes all the difference in the world as to the outcome and what takes place. Because Steve Jobs said this, and I agree wholeheartedly, you hear me repeat it again. He said, if you only have 3 dots to connect, you're going to come out with a very linear solution. But the more dots you have and the more diverse the dots, the more likely you are to come out with very robust solution. In other words, the iPhone was not done in isolation. Other people were involved, bringing their thoughts and ideas to the table, knocking some questions out, adding some others, but finally getting to a point that I think we got it now. Yeah, we got it now. But it was the involvement of other people that were involved in that process. Leonardo da Vinci's curiosity informed all that he did. The key word there is curiosity. That is not a trait only subscribed or to the 15th century, but curiosity is just as viable today in the 21st century as it was in the 15th. And they're saying here that Leonardo da Vinci's curiosity informed all that he did. It defined his life, shaped his relationships, and fueled his innovations. his followers, that's his posse, as you would call it in the 21st century. Those men and women who enjoyed being around him, they something kind of fell off of him onto them. They felt perhaps more involved in what was going on, because if you are hanging around with people that's not going your way, you're going to end up in a destination for which you did not want. So if you have tickets to Miami, you probably don't want to get on a train going to Saratoga, somewhere. You don't want to get on that train. You want to get on the train that's taking you to the place where you're going. So again, curiosity, the driver. His followers knew that to be around Leonardo was to be, number one, prepared for questions, which alludes to the fact and helps me to understand that Leonardo da Vinci not only wanted other people to ask questions, but he was filled with questions, and people had gotten accustomed to that. What would happen in your department, in your management area, if all of a sudden you walked in, everybody was there, had their cup of coffee, having a great time, and you had a barrage of 20 questions, never done this before, and given all of them an opportunity to chime in as to what the answers might be? And that became your modus operandi, asking questions, discussions, and then more questions, agreements, and yes, disagreements. Very little has been accomplished because everything was running right on schedule, at the right place, at the right time. There were always some other things going on, but in that juxtaposition of agreement and disagreement, it's occasionally that we come up with answers that we would not have had otherwise. One simple question and answer was never enough for Leonardo da Vinci. In our world today, where the microwave oven defines everything, we might be more comfortable with one simple question and one simple answer. But if that's the way it is, we're going to be missing the demands of the future, and we're going to be on the other side of change. So I think we should look at it from Leonardo's perspective. One simple question and one simple answer would never be enough for me. Why? Because I want everyone involved in the process. I want everyone to feel that their questions are valid. I want everyone to feel that their answers are what we've been waiting for. And at the end of the day, we can come to a conclusion, but we will find the handprints of the whole team on the answers that we finally embrace. Knowing the right questions to ask is at the core of strategic thinking. This was left us by the great Peter Drucker. Knowing the right questions to ask is at the core of strategic thinking. The Harvard Business Review says today's leaders need to be curious and know how to ask questions that lead them to consider new ideas. Again, questions, curious, etc. And then Albert Einstein said, and I find this statement to be incredible because we all recognize Albert Einstein as this very talented man. I mean, extremely bright. I mean, the man just, he's mentioned his name, that wiry hair just kind of come flowing out in your brain. You see that picture and you just see just tons of smart stuff coming out of his ears. But this is what he said himself: I have no special talent. I am only passionately curious. So what is he really saying? I have no special talent. He is saying I have the skill set that is absolutely essential to discover what I have, who I am, and what I can accomplish. And guess what? Every single one of you listening can be passionately curious. Never quit being the inquisitive child. For most of you who are parents, you will all have memories of a son or daughter who asked 1,000 questions at the wrong time. Even when guests were there, or you're out eating, or at the table having dinner, or was at a quiet moment. And depending on how we handle those questions being asked by our children, we kind of set the stage for how they respond to their own intellectual curiosity. If you put them down, they'll finally get the picture, I shouldn't ask questions. And what if that is what the conclusion that they come to, and take that conclusion with them into the rest of their lives? Now, let's take that to the workplace. In the workplace, we're all adults now. high heel shoes and neckties. So yeah, that's what we are. The boss is there, the bosses are there, the supervisors are there, the managers are there, and they throw it open for a question. But most people sit back and say they really don't mean that. So I'm not going to say one single word. They really don't mean that. But yeah, they mean it. But sometimes you're right. They really don't mean it. But it just seemed like the right thing to do. But if you've ever been in a situation of adults where an adult get put down when asked a question, trust me, not only the question getting the put down will remember it, but everyone around him or her will remember it as well. And the signal being sent is this: the questions and the answers are at the front of the room, not at the back or in the audience. And once that becomes the operational procedure, that also becomes problematic. Choose your position. How do you see yourself embracing inquisitiveness as an asset in your work? I want you to think about that, because if you cannot use inquisitiveness as an asset and you do not embrace it as an asset, it is an incredible opportunity that has gone awry. You want to figure out, how can I use inquisitive as an asset in my leadership in the work that I do? I mean, a formalized thought process on that. That's what I want you to think about. The second strategy is accelerate your imagination, going beyond the known. The known is it's kind of like comfortable. We all like comfortable because we know the ins and outs of comfortable, but the unknown is not where we really want to go, because we're not quite sure what would be required of us or what we bring to the table. So let's look a little further here. In 1966, something very significant happened in America and the world. What happened that caused our imagination to explode? Now, what I'm going to do, I don't have all of your names, and be glad that I don't, because if I did, I would be calling you. So I'm going to have to call on some of the same people that I haven't called on before, like Juliet Daniels. Now, Juliet, I know you're there, and I know you're going to work along with me. Can you come up so that I can see with whom I'm speaking?
Yes, I am right here.
Thank you. Juliet, 1966 happened in the world. And I want you to think, put your best Leonardo da Vinci thinking cap on that you have. What happened in 1966 that caused our imagination to explode? You have any idea?
No, I am a terrible history student. However, I just watched Hidden Figures, so I am hoping it has something to do with our space program.
You are about 50% right and 50% wrong. So I'm going to really embrace your 50% right, because you are headed in the right direction. But it's not Hidden Figures, but you are headed in the right direction. So keep thinking again. Do you think I need to get a little help for you?
Yes, I could.
Okay. Jody, where are you? Jody, what do you think happened in 1966 that just really caused our imagination to explode?
I need a hint. I don't have a
Space.
Star Trek. Someone, Steve
That's
Turner
it.
shared Star Trek.
That's
Thank
it.
you, Steve.
Out of all the times I've done this, Juliet, you're the first person to get it.
No, it wasn't me. It's Steve Turner. He fed me the answer in the chat. So thank you, Steve.
Thank you, Steve. That's what it's Star Trek. Star Trek, in a very subtle way, changed the possibilities of what could be. On Thursday evenings in all of our homes around America, people were watching the Klingons get beat. They were watching the Star Trek crew, Captain Kirk and his crew. That was the first time you had a woman in a major position of power in decision-making. That was the first time you had aliens that came from different backgrounds, all working collectively, collaboratively, inclusively together to get the job done. Everybody needed everybody in order to accomplish the goal. And we got to the point that it didn't matter that we had all of those different people. What really mattered, that we had all of those smart people working in one direction, headed in a good place. So thank you guys. Steve, thanks a lot. I kind of think I planted you there, but I didn't. Can you show your face, Steve? I want to see who did that talk, who made that suggestion. Come on. Is that Steve right there? I don't know. But if it is, thank you, sir, very much. So let's move on to the next one. The Starship Enterprise, Igniting Our Imagination, 1966. That's when it started, and it really set out a revolution that the impossible is possible. Whimsical moments can create an incredible reality. Always remember that. The power of imagination helps you visualize things that cannot be seen, forming an image of an object or an experience before you bring it to a physical reality. This power is inherent in all of us and can be developed to a very high level. The operative sentence is this: and can be developed to a very high level. So don't assume that you cannot imagine. As a child, you were good at it. Bring that childhood imagination back into the adult world and have those whimsical moments and see what innovation might be forthcoming. And just think, with all the issues you face and all the challenges that you have, but look at all the opportunities that you have. You have the ability to be curious, and you have the ability to imagine. Now, in Search Erickson, if you can't see that, I don't know if you can see that, it's not as seen as good on my screen as it probably should be, but Erickson's story, In Search of the Silver Bullet, let me kind of tell you what that story was all about. Taking your organization to the next level of growth, your toolbox matter. And what am I saying? Erickson, out of Sweden, had a project. They worked with all of these suppliers in North America, and they had a new president. The new president had a new strategic plan, had new requests, new things demanded of the North American suppliers. The North American suppliers had to figure out, how do I handle this? And you guys have faced that as well. I know you have. Something comes down the pipeline from somebody somewhere, either Department of Agriculture or some governmental agency, whatever the case may be, and you've not seen it before, but you got to do it. But you've already been doing something else that you know how to do. So how do I do this new thing? It can either worry you to death or get you extremely excited. In this case, it was worrying these suppliers in North America to death because they were very comfortable doing what they were doing. So I had to work with a company out of Houston that Erickson owns, I assume, called Tomorrow. There's technology on the table there that would blow your mind as to what is potential to come along the lines. So I realized that what I needed to do was to help those hundreds and hundreds of North American suppliers understand that what they had become comfortable with was first something that they had imagined 30 years ago, and they made it work. And all they had to do today, the same imagination was there. And I challenged them to accelerate who you are and go back to that place and move forward. So the ability to have your imagination is there, definitely there. But the challenge we have is realizing that we can accelerate it. And that became a great day for me, a great day for them, because I said, you got it. What you did 30 years ago had not been done before. And you did it because you imagined the possibilities and set forth to make them your reality. And this is what Albert Einstein says again: imagination is more important than knowledge. Why? Because knowledge is limited, whereas imagination embraces the entire world, stimulating progress, giving birth to evolution. Wow, that's what you have. It's amazing. So in the face of change within your organization, where can you immediately apply an accelerated imagination? I think I'm going to call on someone to maybe answer that. But Michael Gaffney, where are you, Michael?
I am right here.
Thank you, sir. What do you think about that? Within your organization, where do you think you can immediately apply an accelerated imagination?
This takes me back to my reflections on the article you sent out, and my thanks for that, and to your presentation today. And I've been wrestling with the question you just posed, right? Where in the organization? Recognizing that many of us on this call are mid-level rather than in a position of titular leadership. And also recognizing that the opportunity for innovation is not resident with us necessarily. It shouldn't be limited to us. That one of our roles as leaders is to serve as a catalyst for, a sponsor of, and a protector of innovation and imagination. And I think that goes to the conversation around culture that we've just had. And so my personal perspective is that my role in trying to foster a culture where my organization benefits from an accelerated imagination would be to create the environment in which the largest number of people can exercise that accelerated imagination. What you said earlier about the number of dots we connect, giving us more options and more possibilities, resonates with me. So I think the facile answer, I guess, to your question would be everywhere within the organization. But the role of the leader, at least at my level, would be to not to abdicate completely, right? I'm not devoid of imagination myself, and there is responsibility to exercise that and to actually lead. But to be mindful that perhaps the best part of leadership is to enable, encourage, and protect others to do that same thing on behalf of the organization, because they may likely be the source of better imagination and better ideas than I can generate on my own. And to do that, I think you've not only got to foster the culture, but you've also got to develop a higher tolerance than most of us, I think, developed in growing into our leadership roles for risk. Because encouraging that level of imagination is not without risk. On the other hand, progress is not necessarily possible without assuming some level of risk as well. So I think that's one of the challenges for leaders is how do you manage that risk and how do you encourage others to take that risk and then help protect them from the consequences so that you don't hurt the culture.
Thanks, Michael. I could not have said it better, sir. And I think that the audience listening probably resonated with them equally as much. That's what it's all about at the end of the day, is realizing that this is a gift that we have and making room for that gift to be used. So let's move to the next part. The third strategy is value introspection. Question your present reality. And basically, this is very short, but it's very powerful. Leonardo da Vinci was an illegitimate child. And as a result of that, he was unable to go to school with his wealthy father's sons and daughters. So he had to more or less go to a trade school. And his father noticed that he had a penchant for art and sculpture and things like that. So he put him in under the care of master teachers in those fields, outside of the quote unquote, the academic learning environment. And as a result of that, he brought with him a mindset that was absolutely different than most. And his present reality was leading him down a path that was not fulfilling his internal perspective of himself. And he questioned his present reality. That's what it was, but did that mean that's the way it always had to be? And I really like that, because having grown up in the Mississippi Delta as I did during the era of legal segregation, that was one set of circumstances that could have dictated my life for the rest of my life. But somehow you have to see your life beyond that reality and to realize that that reality was not pushing me to this conversation in 2021 with people involved in extension work from across the country and other places as well. So it's amazing what happened when we give ourselves the opportunity to go back in our own mind, look at our lives, look at our circumstances where we work, around the people with whom we work, the people that we actually that manage our lives, all those things, just to look at them. There's nothing wrong with doing that evaluation so that you can better decide, is this the right fit for me? Am I able to maximize my potential, or am I stuck in doing one thing and never doing anything else? Because once you begin to do that analysis, you're in a better position to assume what you want to do, either remain there or get some movement there or move somewhere else. This is just part of life. If he had not thought that way, the Mona Lisa would not have existed. And I dare say that the many other things for which he's known would not have happened as well. But he decided not to stay where he was found, but to find him another place in which to stay. So he said, basically, do not be constrained by your present reality. That's the bottom line. Know that you can achieve more than you ever thought you could. And all the issues and challenges that you might face as a leader, don't let them get you down. There's a way to find the answer to what you're looking for. So the question is your present reality, asset or liability. This is what I want you to just to think about, because I don't want to put anyone on the spot. But I think I owe it to you to suggest to you to always ask that question. Is my present reality an asset or is it a liability? Is it moving me forward or is it holding me back? Is it expanding my horizon or is sending me backwards? What is it doing? Because once you begin to ask yourself those questions, you also put yourself in a position, depending upon what your discovery is, on how you want to handle that going forward. It may mean you stay exactly where you are, but you may do things differently than you would have done before. And you may, if you're quiet, you may decide, well, you know, I love what I'm doing. I just want to ask a few more questions. I just want to be a bit more imaginative. I want to maybe have some projects to work on that I've never worked on before. These are the types of things that go through our head, through our mind, that I think leaders need to know, because sometimes the answers to the future are in the head and in the conversation of someone else. The fourth strategy is to choose your mindset. Reboot your foundation. I love that. You can accomplish more than you think you can, according to Steve Jobs. Your mindset matters. But he's also saying that the team's mindset matter. And this is important because what happens if you're working with let's say 10 people, and of those 10 people, you have the growth mindset of 8 and you have the fixed mindset in 2, but you need all 10 because all 10 are viable participants in solving the issues that you want. So we're going to look at the 2 mindsets and look at what the possibilities are when the growth mindset finds itself in subjection to the fixed mindset, because usually the fixed mindset is a comfortable mindset, not necessarily future focused. Carol Dweck is the godmother of the mindset study, and this is what she says. Some believe that success is based on innate ability. These are said to have a fixed theory of intelligence, which is called the fixed mindset. Others believe their success is based on hard work, learning, training, and doggedness, are said to have a growth or an incremental theory of intelligence, which is what we currently call the growth mindset. And I would say that Leonardo da Vinci had a growth mindset, but many of the people that surrounded him had a fixed mindset. But he was trying to keep his mindset growing, but at the same time, he recognized that I want the people around me to grow as well. Because if he didn't, he would not have had those big dinners he had all the time, inviting people from all walks of life to kind of share their thoughts and going through these dialogues. Long before it was a famous thing to do as we do today, having these great times of communication by multiple diverse people so that you can get multiple diverse answers. And you know, I only got about 10 minutes left and I got a lot more talking to do. That's the price you pay for having a Southerner, Carrie, because Southerners don't know how to do things in 15-minute increments. The fixed mindset is the status quo. The future is locked out and people are content with the present and prior knowledge. Whereas the growth mindset is an inquisitive mindset in search of a steady stream of ideas, driven by their EQ, their entrepreneurial quotient, and driven by the potential of discovery of more. And I think that all of you would not be in the extension work if you weren't that way. Because the extension work, if all it was 1862 in the Morrill Act, and establishing A&M colleges, that was it, and it stayed there, then you would not have been in an innovative mindset. You wouldn't have the urban perspective because it wasn't designed for urban perspective historically. But you have it now, and you're doing incredible work all across America and in many places that we would never have dreamed you would have been before. And all of this happened because, for the most part, your organization has embraced the growth mindset. And this is very, very important. But you will always have people working with you with a fixed mindset. That's just part of it. But the goal is to, as leaders, is to always help your people understand, don't be afraid of the future, enjoy what you have accomplished, but look at your accomplishments as your launching pad, not as your holding pattern. Because oftentimes this is what people do, because we are people and people like to be in a comfortable mode. And excuse me, and the future is not always a comfortable perspective, but is the one where we want to pursue. Be willing to experiment and be unafraid of failure. Remember that resumes are about the past, not the future. Let go of comfortable ideas and question ingrained assumption. Embrace being labeled as ahead of your time. I love that. Embrace being labeled as ahead of your time. Because every single one of us have a little something in us that's in a world that has not yet happened. And we just kind of pitch it off. We don't think about it because no one else is talking about it. So why should I talk about it? You know, I distinctively remember some about 15 years ago, I was sitting in my home and I told my wife, I said, you know, I think the pizza world is stuck in time. That's because you should be able to put anything you want on that round roll of bread. You should have breakfast pizza, lunch pizza, dinner pizza. And, you know, it was just a great idea, but nobody was talking about that idea. So I just let it go in my head and out of my head until 10 years later, when all of a sudden Mazzio Pizza and all these Pizza Huts started doing these different types of pizzas to accommodate various time of eating. And I had thought about that. And we all have those things happening to us. But when you have an idea, no matter how crazy it might sound, do yourself a favor, at least write it down. Because once you get used to writing it down, then all of a sudden its proposition for value becomes more important. Which mindset is more often encountered? The fixed mindset or the growth? I would hope that the answer to that from all of you would be the growth mindset. But occasionally the fixed mindset shows up. That's why it's a study, because there are those of us who are very comfortable being where we are and have no desire to move beyond that. But the marketplace is demanding of you things that move you beyond yesterday to today and into tomorrow. And the last strategy is brand your culture with RAY. And RAY is an acronym for respect, affirmation, and inclusion. Those are the three things that every human being needs in order to maximize his or her position. And guess what? They can only come from another person like us. A lot of people in our industry haven't had very diverse experiences, so they don't have enough dots to connect. And they end up with very linear solutions without a broad perspective on the problem. The broader one's understanding of the human experience, the better designs we will have. Again, it just speaks to the idea of creating a culture that is welcoming, a culture that respects, affirms, and includes everybody, so that everyone can maximize their potential and make significant contributions to the organization. You know, the father of all of this, Mr. Morrill, I mean, I think about what he had to go to Congress with. And you got the Civil War. The country's almost torn asunder, but yet he's thinking about a future yet to be. And because he did when he did, we are here today. It's amazing how important your thought process is on the future of generations yet to come. So don't cheat them out of the great ideas that are in your head and swirling around in your mind. Get them out, write them out, talk about them, and for many of them, bring them to life. Ray emerges as we bring our culture with, as we brand our culture with timeless and universal principles called the 8 Habits of the Heart. It's one of the books that I wrote that Supreme Court Justice Sandra Day O'Connor invited me to speak to the Supreme Court to share these habits of the heart. When they are lived out, your culture becomes respectful, affirmative, and inclusive of others. And these are the 8 habits: nurturing attitude, responsibility, dependability, friendship, sisterhood, brotherhood, high expectations, courage, and hope. The idea is for all of you involved in extension work to become nurturing attitude. Not look at these as a definition, but look at these as principles to become and principles to live out through micro dosages of unselfishness on a daily basis with and among the people you work and those you serve. Leaders become these timeless principles, the 8 habits of the heart. Your people expected more. How will your more look? Those are questions that you have to ask. Respect, affirmation, and inclusion. Within our lives, respect looks like non-judgmental acceptance of others, valuing their contribution, and speaking honestly of their efforts in their presence or in the presence of others. Affirmation looks like individual acts of validation and support shared with another person privately or in the presence of others. Inclusion, within our lives, inclusion looks like an open and accepting environment where all are, guess what, anticipated, welcomed, and valued. And this is what happens when Ray is present. Ray drives individual performance. That means Michael really kicks it out of the ballpark when he's respected, affirmed, and included. But guess what? If Michael kicks it out of the ballpark and everyone else is feeling the same way, Ray also develops team excellence. And if the team is headed in the same direction, doing the same thing with the same amount of gusto, great things are going to happen. And lastly, but of equal importance, Ray delivers personal fulfillment. And that's key. You as the individual are delighted in where you are, with whom you work, and what you are accomplishing. Your workplace success depends upon providing more critical dots to connect. Diversity broadens perspective. So, as I come to my close, driven by purpose, continue your journey of discovery. Michael and Carrie, it's been my pleasure being with you. And I think we have to get out of stop share here and see if there are questions.
Yes, Clifton, thank you so much. I've been just watching the chat box this whole time, and if you have a chance to go back and look at it, there's just all sorts of conversations going on and ideas that you're generating amongst our participants here. So we have time for just one question, and we've got one. I found one here in the chat. So Elisa asks, how do you drive this growth mindset in our communities, especially those where they are stuck on their past golden days?
That's amazing. And you're absolutely right, because oftentimes this is where it happens. Golden days are comfortable days. And oftentimes it's not that people don't want to move forward, but they may feel they don't have the tools to get them there, or their background that they had that got them into the quote unquote the golden age, as it were. That background is not, they don't feel that it is of value in a world that has drastically changed. So what I think has to happen from a leadership or a manager's perspective, you have to look, how do I bring something from the golden age paired with something in the platinum age to come, to show how these two things are not in competition with each other, but they are connected in such a way that you create a stronger collection of ideas by doing that. In other words, you don't ignore the past, but you take that thing from the past that's good, connect it with what you want to do. And just like you, if you go back, I go back to Mr. Morrell again, find out what did he actually present to Congress? How did he get them to change their mind? When you're thinking about a war, you're thinking about a country that may not be, yet he's thinking about what can be. That would have been a golden era, 1862. But look what you have today. So we know it's possible. But when a person is afraid of the future, not feeling that they don't have all of the things that someone else has. And this is why I say this: experience and exuberance are worthy companions. Most people with experience hang around with other people with experience, and they talk about yesterday. Exuberance don't have a yesterday. They're just 23. But exuberance are looking to the future. But if you can create situations where exuberance and experience are paired off, that's where you can get some incredible, like you take Michael. Michael, I'm just saying that you are experienced. You may not be, but I'm saying you are. You look like you're older than 23. And you pair Michael with, let's say, Adam down here, who looks fairly young. So don't change it, Adam. You look young. You pair Michael and Adam together, then all of a sudden you got exuberance and you have experience. And when those two combine, you may be absolutely surprised at what you might get. But most time, the golden age, they always kind of ended what's it. That's the way it used to be. And once you get into the used to be mindset, that's problematic, because you're taking yourself out of the game, and you don't want to do that. So Carrie, thank you. And thank you for actually representing your organization well and really schooling me on what to do and what not to do. I could not let Carrie down. She was a great person to work with. And I really appreciate the time that we spent. We spent a lot of time talking. And she gave me a number that she never answered. And so I had to go through another person in order to get her, so she could scream, I don't feel like talking to Clifton for about 3 hours from now. So I called him later. But we always talk, and we always discuss the things that matter to all of you. So it has really been my pleasure being with you this morning. You guys have a great day and a great life.
All right. Thanks, Clifton.
Well, I will just start and the slide will come up, I'm sure. For those who don't know me, I'm Susan Kelly of North Carolina Cooperative Extension. As my time as NACDEP's immediate past president comes to an end, I get the distinct honor to present awards to some very deserving NACDEP members. The highest NACDEP honors are the Creative Excellence Award sponsored by JCEP, the Distinguished Career Award, and the Distinguished National Service Award. The JCEP sponsored award salutes new approaches to programming that advance the field of community development. It is also the only honor with a cash prize, $250 from JCEP. The two NACDEP Distinguished Awards can only be received once and are meant to honor persons for achievements over a long period of time. The Creative Excellence Award, sponsored by JCEP, recognizes an individual or team that demonstrates creative excellence that is adopted by others, advancing the work of community development in innovative ways. This year's honoree is the Rural Online Initiative from Utah State University. In 2018, the Utah legislature funded the Rural Online Initiative, a remote work program to train rural residents on remote work best practices. This was in response to high unemployment rates and rural urban migration, which were challenges facing rural Utah communities. The initiative was assigned to Utah State University Extension. It created a pilot program in 2018 and then created the Master Work Remote Professional Certificate course, the only certified remote work program in Utah. We saw some presentations on that a couple of days ago. It's excellent. The program allows communities to provide ongoing education, leverages existing talent and infrastructure, and strengthens county economic bases without requiring residents or new businesses to relocate. The ROI program takes an innovative approach to the economic development of rural communities as remote work applies to more than just high-tech industries. It is a unique way to reduce unemployment, reach diverse populations, support clean air quality, and increase median incomes throughout rural America. And the program continues to grow, addressing further community needs, developing other courses, serving high-need populations, addressing rural-urban migration trends, expanding distributed economic development efforts, and developing partnerships. Finally, this first-of-the-nation effort has been replicated extensively. The ROI program currently has an affiliate program with land-grant universities in several states, including Illinois, Indiana, Iowa, Kansas, Missouri, Montana, New Mexico, North Dakota, South Dakota, and Washington. If members of the ROI team from Utah State are here, please wave and let's give them a virtual round of applause. We can do Zoom clapping too. Clap with your neighbor. Congratulations. There was no nominee this year for the Distinguished Service Award. This award recognizes an individual who has been actively involved in service to NACDEP and contributed significantly to the organization. The NACDEP Distinguished Career Award recognizes a NACDEP member who is actively engaged in Extension community development programs and who has served more than 7 years in Extension community development programming. This year, the honor goes to Cheryl Burkhart Kriesel, an Extension specialist with Rural Property, Nebraska, and a professor of agricultural economics based at the University of Nebraska's Panhandle Research Extension Education Center. Burkhart Kriesel's work has centered on research-based rural community solutions that drive economic and social growth within a community or region. She headed a team that created a new resident recruitment and retention research effort in 2007. It evolved into multiple grants, and the research findings led to the creation of Marketing Hometown America, an action-oriented community engagement program. That program has received NACDEP and Community Development Society awards, and 6 other states are now implementing it. In the area of tourism, Cheryl initiated the red carpet service after a rural community's request to improve their frontline customer service to travelers and tourists. The program has been delivered over 25 locations in Nebraska and 4 in South Dakota, and twice received NACDEP awards. Cheryl has also consulted with various tourism entities on service training, including the State of Alaska Tourism Department and Blue Ridge Parkway Scenic Byway stakeholders. Meanwhile, in workforce education, Cheryl forged a partnership with South Dakota State University Extension and the North Central Regional Rural Development Center to enhance programming within the region, focusing on the skills gap issue. This led to her co-authoring a chapter in the 2018 Federal Reserve's Investing in America's Workforce. Also, Cheryl developed a community engagement course for the Great Plains Interactive Distance Education Alliance in 2019, which tied real-life community engagement experiences to her interest in serving learners. Finally, Cheryl has received numerous awards and honors. Just in the last 6 years, she was invited to become a member of the USDA National Rural Workforce Innovation Network in 2019, received the OMVET Innovation Extension Award from the Institute of Agriculture and Natural Resources from the University of Nebraska-Lincoln in 2019. She was named the Nebraska Extension Innovative Specialist in 2017. She received the National Rural Sociological Society Excellence in Extension and Outreach Award in 2015, the Excellence in Extension Award for Nebraska chapter of Gamma Sigma Delta. It is with great pleasure that I present the NACDEP Distinguished Career Award to Cheryl Burkhart Kriesel. Now, let's hear briefly from Cheryl.
Thank you so much, Susan. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate this recognition when it comes from your professional organization especially at this level. It really means a lot. I'd also like to give special thanks to my Nebraska colleagues and team members for actually submitting the nomination, and to colleagues from other states for their very generous letters of support. To be honest, I am really humbled, and I just want to thank you again for this award. Thank you very much.
I can clap out loud. Congratulations. Of course, there are many other persons and programs worthy of recognition. In years when we can be face-to-face, as we hope to do next year, we would be applauding all the fantastic NACDEP work that received awards during our annual banquet celebration. But since we are again virtual, we have created this special video tribute of the national winners and runners-up. When we are together, the NACDEP president joins the recipients in a photo to capture the moment. That's a little bit harder to pull off virtually, but our president, Adam Hodges, was up to the challenge. So to add a bit of fun, see if you can count the total number of people honored and the number of different Adam versions you see. Bragging rights go to the persons that get the number right. let's give a virtual hand to all those fabulous professionals for their service to communities. Thank you for providing us with such great examples of community development efforts. Now for quick bragging rights. How many people were honored total? Jot in chat with the word honored. And how many different Atom versions did you see? Jot in chat with the word Atom. I know the answer. Looks like we're getting close. How many honored and how many Atoms? That's hilarious. Okay, the correct numbers are 109 honorees and 11 different versions of Atom. Claim your bragging rights if you got one or both correct. Don't forget to check out the NACDEP website to learn even more about these projects and to explore ways to have your great efforts featured next year. Detailed information about these efforts is on the NACDEP website under the Awards tab. We want to be able to honor individuals and teams in every award category next year, so be thinking ahead. Great work deserves recognition, and we plan to do a lot more of that next year when we meet in person in Indianapolis. Congratulations to everyone.
All right. And now I believe Juliet will be sharing some competition winners.
Yes, thank you. So we had, well, before I get into our hospitality competition, Melinda has asked me to share the winner of the student referral competition that we had this year. And that was, let me kind of get my desktop set up correctly so I can move it around. So the winner of the student referral competition is Michael Wilcox. Congratulations. He referred 12 students to participate in this year's virtual conference, and he's the winner of $500 as a thank you check. So thank you, Michael, for getting so many students to participate. I also get the honor of announcing our hospitality competition winners. We had a lot of fun with the hospitality competitions and events. We started off with a game night on Monday evening where we had a rousing couple rounds of bingo. And our first bingo winner was Amanda Perez with the University of Arkansas. She won in part because she is the early bird, although this picture of the early bird is a little misleading because we learned she actually gets up at 4 in the morning. And so her prize for that is a Catan board game. Our second winner in bingo was Tamara Ogle with Purdue Extension. She won in part because she is a self-proclaimed property tax nerd. And so she wins the Monopoly National Parks edition for her participation. We ended up giving a consolation prize, and that goes to Melissa Hamilton. She did get 5 in a row, although it took her 2 games, but with 1 card, a little bit of cheating. We're going to give it to her anyway. She won in part for sharing of her story of the mealworms. And unless you were there, I'm not going to go into what she plans on doing with those mealworms. So her consolation prize is cement, earthworms, and cheese factories. We also did a math competition. I think there wasn't a lot of air left for math after the year of pandemic that we've been in, but we did have a couple of submissions. And our winner of the math competition was Brian Rayson from Ohio State University. And his prize is Thinking Small, the book Thinking Small by Daniel Immerwahr. Our last competition was our scavenger hunt. It was a lot of fun for those who participated. We didn't have as many entries as we would have liked, but I think it's a little harder to do virtual. And so we did a couple different prizes for this. Our first one is for conference participation, and Tammy Estevez gets that, and her prize is a selfie stick tripod. Tammy was going to win a prize no matter what, because she not only was she committed to participate in this, but she actually resubmitted a number of entries till she got it right. For the Community Development Showcase category, the winner is Gwen Stewart, and her prize is Community Development in Action by Margaret Ledwith. And then our last category is Fun and Personal, and the winner is Melissa Hamilton, and the prize for her is Kids Bathrobe and Hair Wraps. She may or may not have included submissions that may or may not have included a child who may or may not be slightly clothing averse. And finally, the overall winner, the top point winner is Gwen Stewart, and her prize is a 10x42 roof prism binoculars, so she can go out and scavenge hunt things out in her environment. So congratulations, and thank you all for participating in the fun hosting events that we did.